What up, though? Back again with another Woodward Pistons. I, of course, am Steve. Please, before you do anything, if you're not subscribed to this Woodward Pistons channel on YouTube, definitely do that. Give us a like, leave us a comment on everything. If you're here live, thank you so much. Drop a comment in the live chat, say what up, though, and let us know what you think. Today, of course, we are talking about the number 5 overall pick in this 2023 draft, which our Detroit Pistons own, of course. Today, I'm going to talk about the 7 players I believe the Pistons should be looking at number 7 and who I think they would bring in for workouts and at least be grinding tape on all season long, and now narrow it down to these 7 players. I think this is going to be a little bit different, whereas before with, the Cade pick, it was down to pretty much 3 dudes, right? And then last year it seemed like it was a 2-horse race, really, maybe 3 with Mathurin. But I remember just seeing reports and reading things about Ivy and Keegan Murray, probably even in March, that the team really liked both prospects. It would have been interesting to see if both players were on the board, what direction they went. But yeah, Ivy and Keegan Murray, and then Mathurin was still there. So at least at the very minimum, it seemed like a 3-horse race yet again. I think the year before Cade with the Killian draft, that was the one that was kind of up in the air. A new regime started. But now in 2023 at number 5, I think there are a lot of different directions they could go. But I do think the idea of fit has to come in a little bit more into play. So before we get started, of these 7 guys, there are going to be a couple names that I'm not going to put in consideration for the 7. Chief amongst them probably is Brandon Miller, only because I don't think Brandon Miller is going to fall. I know I've heard off and on people say the off the court stuff with the gun issue and his involvement or non-involvement in that murder case seems to be maybe something that fall. There's the whole report about him not giving great interviews at the combine. There are a couple things in the scouting report. Also, in terms of his finishing at the rim in the half court, his finishing and his 2-point percentage against teams that are in the top 50 in NCAA basketball, I think those are also things that are concerning. But I don't see a scenario in which Brandon Miller falls past Houston at number 4. To pair Jabari and Brandon Miller there at both forward spots, both guys who project to be at the very minimum at least shooters. You can line up pretty much anywhere on the court and they're going to get you 38 to 40% from 3. That just seems to me like too much of a thing that Houston just wouldn't pass up. And even if there are all these other concerns, I think that's less of a thing for Houston, with Jalen Green, number 1, being able to create a bunch of shots. And then also, even if Harden comes on, I think that still is one where it's you want as many floor spacers around Harden as possible, right? So I just think Brandon Miller, no matter what, I just don't see a scenario where he falls to number 5. And then the other one is Amen Thompson. Again, this is why I started out a little bit with the fit question, is because I think that's the one where, yes, we understand the potential. Yes, we understand the next level athleticism. But it's, to me, the thing with Amen is he needs to be in a scenario where he's just given the ball and given the space and the time to thrive. I do not think Detroit is there, because you have to give him the ball. And you can't be taking the ball out of Cade and Ivy's hands. That's just the number one thing, because then you turning them more into floor spacers, Cade and Ivy, that is. It puts more of a burden on them to have that 3-point shot, because you invested another top 5 pick in a guy who can't shoot. And Amen, his jump shot is a major concern. He doesn't really shoot outside of 8 feet. And his best attributes are getting into the paint and creating easy shots, being the point guard, the main facilitator for the offense. Cade is the maestro, as I've called him. He can score, he can distribute, he can work with just about anybody. But then you throw Ivy in there as well. I think they seem to be more of a 1-2 punch, where Ivy has more off-ball stuff that he hasn't quite unlocked. Took a little big leap in terms of being an off-ball shooter, catch and shoot guy, I think. But then it's okay, you're not going to let Cade just run as much as you can. You're not going to let Ivy attack the rim as much as you can, because now you're bringing in Amen, who you mainly have to just give him the ball so he can get in the paint and create these easy shots. Or you're setting him up in this position to where he has to be a catch and shoot guy right out of the gate. So I just don't think, I hate to talk about the fit, but it's a thing here. I just think this is not the best scenario for Amen to succeed long term, and it's not the place where he can be given the space and the time to be able to reach his full potential and get some other things. Because right here, right now with Caden Ivey, he just has to have a jump shot. Amen Thompson has to have a jump shot in order to be okay here, unless the plan is just to like load up with nothing but shooters in free agency. I find it really hard for the Pistons to invest a top 5 pick in a player that needs the ball the most to succeed, and he does not space the floor. And it's really hard to project that he will be able to space the floor. Again, hate me if you want for this one, but go look up scouting reports from like Sam Vecini, from the No Ceilings guys, from Adam Spinella. I've had global scouting on my podcast. He's a big Amen Thompson fan, and he had him number 3 pretty much all year. And when I asked him point blank, like, how confident are you that Amen Thompson could get a jump shot? He was like, I'm not very confident in it. So even people that are really high on Amen and think he will be great, it's just a hard ask with a team that already has 2 primary guards that you feel very confident in being really good, that you bring in another guy that just takes the ball out of their hands. I just don't think it's that great of a fit. I'm a big Keontae George fan too, but that's just like out of the question, right? And, you know, he's somebody that maybe if the Pistons fell further than 5, I would talk about, but it's like, it's not even worth entertaining. But I am a big Keontae George fan. So if the team traded down though, maybe, but I think again, this is another guy that's a guard that needs the ball in his hands a lot. I think he definitely has the jumper and the floor spacing, but a 6'4" guard next to 6'4" Ivy, and then Cade's going to probably move over to a small forward. That's another thing that I just don't want to happen is whoever they draft and they invest this pick in for the long term, please, please, please keep Cade at guard, at least at shooting guard, because if you move him over to small forward, it pretty much eliminates the possibility of that mismatch potential, which with his size at the guard position. I keep saying he goes from being a big guard to being an average size small forward if he moves over to the 3. I'm just really against any roster construction scenario where Cade has to move over to the 3. Could he do it in spurts and maybe like a small ball lineup? Sure, maybe, but is that the most ideal thing that you want for him? No. So somebody like a Keontae George would do that. And Cason Wallace is another guy I've loved so much. And I think if it was just Cade and there were no other guards on the Pistons, then yeah, these 2 would be more in consideration. But you can't be bringing another 6'4" guard to, again, eliminate the mismatch potential that Cade has at the shooting guard position. So now here, the main event for our evening, the 7 players I believe that the Pistons should be looking at and should be really bringing in for workouts and stuff for the number 5 overall pick, starting with Grady Dick. Grady Dick is listed at 6'8", 205 pounds. He is a guard / wing out of Kansas. This past year at Kansas, Grady Dick scored 14.1 points per game, pulled in 5.1 rebounds, dished out 1.7 assists, had 1.4 steals per game, 0.3 blocks, and then just 1.3 turnovers. Shooting splits are 48.4% from 2, 40.3% from 3, and then 85.4% from the free throw line. Stop me if you heard this one before, but there is a guy with a lighter skin tone that is a good shooter. I know there's the jokes and like the lazy scouting of like compare the white shooter to the white shooter. I'm sure there's like Kevin Herter comparisons out there like that, Tyler Hero or whatever. I don't think Grady Dick plays like any of those guys. Number one, I think he's the best shooter in this 2023 draft class. Fight me on that one. I just think that Grady Dick is able to get a shot off from catch and shoot on the movement, you know, off of ball screens, just in a bunch of different scenarios. He will shoot from 3 no matter what role you put him into. And at 6'8", it's really hard to block his shot because he's a big dude and he will play the shooting guard sometimes. He will play the small forward. Think of like Cam Johnson with ball skills is what I've been arguing for with Grady Dick all year. Cam Johnson's already a really good player in the rotation, but imagine that guy that actually had a dribble game and was like one of the primary ball creators, shot creators for his team, which is what Grady Dick was at Kansas. Jalen Wilson took up the number 1 most amount of shots for Kansas, but especially as the year wore on, they turned the offense more and more over to Grady Dick. And if Jalen Wilson's shot wasn't falling, then it was Grady Dick, because that Kansas team, like the whole offense was Jalen Wilson, or it was Grady Dick. So I really like Grady Dick. I think also like his 2-point game is underrated. He will attack the rack little bit more than what he's given credit for. I think he uses his size pretty well to be able to get in there. The free throw attempt rate isn't what you would want it to be, 22.6%, but I think that's more a product of Jalen Wilson taking up so much usage. Grady Dick only had 20.6% usage, so he didn't really take up the ball a lot, which is another thing in his scouting report I think that is good. He's one of those guys that like he's just going to work no matter what, and it's hard to find 6'8" shooters that shoot 40% from three. I also think he's a good team defender. Part of the reason why he's the first guy list and probably lower on the list. I'm sure there's some of you right now listening to this that are like, no to Grady Dick because you're concerned about defense. As am I, which is why he's lower on the list. If he was a better man-to-man defender, then I think he would definitely be higher up on the list in consideration for the Pistons, because on offense, he's exactly what you want. And with that size, with the shooting, he can be like a second or third option. Second option, probably like his highest level outcome, but like third option on a given night, not out of the question. Defensively, though, you're not going to be asking him to guard small forwards or like the best wings in the NBA because he will get shook. But if he's somebody that's more of a help defender, isn't asked to take on tough defensive assignments, then that would be more of a thing. So again, the fit problem is going to be the thing. And to me too, all these guys that are in consideration, the 7 guys in consideration for the number 5 overall pick, I think they all have pretty even potential of being really good players. So the fit thing does need to come into play, because if you're talking about guys that all have really high end potential, then you should be looking at like, oh, let me find the one that like at his highest level outcome fits the best with the team that I already have. And Grady Dick's defense is what keeps him down. Like you would really have to buy into him being like a Klay Thompson level defender, which I just don't see laterally. Grady Dick doesn't move like that. And I don't want to say fight, but Klay Thompson was gritty, was rough, would throw his body around in there. I just don't see that with Grady Dick. And when you're limited, like side to side athlete, you just can't be that great of a man-to-man defender. So that's really where Grady Dick's limitations are in there. Again, great 3-point shooter. He would probably be a prime target if like Weaver and company were like, you know what, we're not confident in anybody at number 5. Let's trade down, get 2 picks. I think Grady Dick would definitely be in that consideration because number 1, his shooting abilities, his ball handling abilities, like you just can't find that in too many guys. Next up on the list is Anthony Black out of the University of Arkansas. He's listed at 6'7", 198 pounds. Again, listed as a guard, but he's the one to me that is the most intriguing, I think, because he can play a couple different positions. I've kind of called him the lost ball brother because of the way he can dish out the rock, but I think he attacks the rack way better than any of the ball brothers have. The shooting is a concern for Anthony Black, which we'll get to in a minute. But we want to give him his roses and his flowers first. Anthony Black's free throw attempt rate was 57.8% at Arkansas. That is really good for a player that does not play close to the rim all the time. Normally, the free throw attempt rate that are over 50 are guys like centers or power forward who pretty much are banging down low and who get a lot of contact inherent in their game and inherent in the position that they play. Anthony Black, in the film study I've watched, like if he's the off-ball cutter, if he's the primary ball handler, he will attack. He's one of the best like face-up, down the lane, middle of traffic cutters I've seen. Normally you see guys kind of cutting from the wing or cutting from the corner. He will be somebody that cuts like from the top of the key, or he'll start from the wing, but then get down the middle of the lane, get a pass, get contact, and get some extra free throw shots. So that's the one thing that I really like about him. And Anthony Black is a riser. Jeremy Woo of ESPN mocked him at number 5, maybe like a month and a half to 2 months ago. So he was kind of a little bit ahead of the curve on that because he does everything well. Anthony Black does everything well except shoot. That's going to be the thing, and why, again, he's further down the list. It's hard to feel confident in the jump shot. But I think he's a little bit above Amen Thompson in terms of the fit, because again, you can see everything else he does well. And one of the other reasons why I like Anthony Black so much is this past summer in 2022 at the FIBA Under-19s America's Cup, USA won the gold medal there. and they had a team that had Cam Whitmore, who won the MVP. They had Khalil Ware on there. They also had Gigi Jackson, so they had a really stout front court. But it was Anthony Black that led this team in rebounds, and it led this team in block shots. That's why I say, even though he's listed as a guard, he can play a couple different positions. It would not surprise me if Anthony Black ended up being like this Kyle Anderson small forward, but with way, way, way more athleticism. That's another thing too that's underrated about Anthony Black. He will cut, he will catch lobs, he gets up and makes these dunks that you're like, oh yeah, I forgot this guy has bounce and has that level of athleticism, on top of being a really good point guard that can dish out the rock and really get a bunch of different assists. So I didn't really give stats because I want to give that breakdown before I really give Anthony Black stats. 12.8 points per game at Arkansas, 5.1 rebounds, 3.9 assists, 2.1 steals, 0.6 blocks. And shooting splits were 51.3% from 2-point range, 30.1% from three, and then 70.5% from that free throw line. True shooting percentage is 54.9%. I think if you're really into analytics and if you're really into like the Daryl Morey philosophy of, hey, you just got to shoot threes and like get to the rim, you're kind of on the fence with Anthony Black, because you're like, okay, he's around 55% true shooting, which is average pretty much everywhere. Then you're like, okay, I can see he attacks the rack. I can see he gets to the free throw line, but then like, how much do I really buy into his jump shot? It's a tough ask. Where I've come to with Anthony Black, though, is number one, if he was the number 5 overall pick for the Pistons, nobody should get mad, because, again, he does everything well but shoot. And what I've thought about is, like, Anthony Black is the perfect target for, like, the Spurs, the Pelicans, the Oklahoma City Thunder, these teams that are like, you know what, we just need to find these freakish guys that have really good basketball IQ, have things like J-Dub's wingspan, or have things like Devin Vassell's defensive awareness and everything, or have things like Anthony Black's overall game. And it's like, you know what, if we just can teach them to shoot, that's fine. And then lo and behold, OKC gets like Chip England, the Pelicans have Fred Vinson, and they've been able to turn guys like Lonzo Ball there in New Orleans into really, really good 3-point shooters. Shout out Lonzo Ball, man. I hope it's not true that that's the end of your career. In Oklahoma City Thunder, you know, Chip England's really done wonders with Josh Giddey here, J-Dub there. Poku's turned into a 40% 3-point shooter, so that's definitely been there. And the Spurs speak for themselves, right? They've just been able to do it with so many different guys. So that's why I think, like, if we really believe in like Bayline being a good shooting coach, then Anthony Black ought to be in there, because he's also a great man-to-man defender. He's also a great team defender. Like I said, he does everything well except shoot. If you believe in his shot, then he is going to be somebody that fits in. A really hard guy to kind of comp to, because like you see him and you're like, okay, I see parts of Kyle Anderson, who was also a point guard in UCLA in college, but then you're like, well, he could probably out jump and outrun Kyle Anderson like 3 times over. You see some of the Ball brothers with the passing, with the vision that nobody else sees. But then you see some of the grittiness of being able to, you know, lead Team USA in block shots and in rebounds. And you're like, okay, this is a very unique player that, again, I just want to teach him how to shoot. If I believe in that, then man, who knows what he could become. Next is maybe the biggest risk, not maybe the biggest risk, definitely the biggest risk. It's Gigi Jackson out of South Carolina. I know. For those of you panicking right now, I would not advocate for taking Gigi Jackson at number 5 if it were me, but he has the potential to be there at number 5. If you believe he's going to work out, then he has one of the highest upsides in this draft, along with Amen Thompson. It's probably like, you know, Wembanyama, obviously number 1. I think Amen would be next in terms of the highest potential, and then Gigi Jackson if they reach their full ceiling. I know a lot of people want to say Taylor Hendricks looks like Jeremy Grant and want to make that comp. Personally, I don't see it, because Taylor Hendricks does not have the level of ball skills that Gigi Jackson does. I see a lot more of like what Jeremy Grant did in Detroit. I see those same things in Gigi, where he's able to create in the mid-range. He has an absolutely solid handle that you do not see in many 6'8", 6'9" guys, and has a good 3-point shot. As my guy Steve Henson said on the Resball mock draft, I think with Gigi, it's less a question about, can he shoot, and more question about shot selection. On the year, GG Jackson scored 15.4 points per game, pulled in 5.9 rebounds, had 0.8 assists, 0.8 steals, 0.8 blocks per game. Shooting splits were 41.9% from 2-point range, 32.4% from three, and then 67.7% from that free throw line. GG Jackson is listed at 6'9", 215 pounds. At the combine, measured in something like a 6'11" and a half inch wingspan, something around there. 47.4 true shooting percentage. If you do not know what that means, true shooting percentage is a combination of the 2-point shots, the 3-point shots, and from the free throw line. Anything below 50% is bad. And this is what every scouting report will say, is like, there's not many players drafted in the top, 20 even, that have below a 50% true shooting. This year, there might be actually 2. Jalen Hood-Schifino is another guy that has this kind of question mark in him. But man, it's tough to get over that part of it again, which is why I'm like, if it were me, I would not take GG Jackson at number 5. I think GG Jackson is a fantastic, second first round pick. So if you have another one in the bag, then yeah, you definitely should be investing in this guy that at 6'9", 215 can create his own shot and has a really good jumper like that. Like Utah's, if I were Utah, I would be like, yeah, I'm taking GG Jackson with one of the 2 picks I have at 9 and 16. I mean, Orlando, this is another Orlando guy. Their GM famously likes to take these dudes that have long wingspan, that are taller like that. And you have the time there in Orlando and in Utah to be like, I don't need to rush this guy. Detroit would be the same way. But at number 5, again, the fit thing comes into play, because it's hard to say, okay, we're going to draft this guy number 5 and then probably not start him. He might not get many minutes even in the first year, and this is a long-term developmental project. But Troy Weaver has shown time and time again through the stories we've heard about who he fell in love with in Oklahoma City Thunder and banged the table for, famously Russell Westbrook. A couple second-round picks, Terrence Ferguson and our guy Hamidou, have been players that have been linked to him, and they fit this prototype as well. Like, yeah, maybe the percentages don't look great, and yeah, maybe there's rawness to him, but man, you can't deny the athleticism. You can't deny the raw talent and skill at that size. You just can't pass it up. Again, yeah, I think it's a little reckless to take him at number 5, but GG's talent absolutely warrants it. It's going to take time to iron out. But another guy along with Grady Dick, that if the team, Troy Weaver and company, were like, hey, let's get an extra first round pick, I think GG would be one of the ones that they target, because again, this would be a great one of like, okay, maybe we draft somebody that we feel more confident can come right in and get major minutes right away. But you know what? We also want to take the roll of a dice on somebody we see has super high potential as well, like a Jalen Duren. They saw that with Isaiah Stewart as well, although many other people probably did not see it that way. Troy Weaver's shown he can do this. So maybe not a number 5. The talent warrants it, but probably more of like an extra first round pick kind of guy for GG Jackson. Next, we have the more safer option that probably still is more of a wild card, is Taylor Hendricks. I know many of you all who have been here, listen to these things live that I've seen in the chat, have talked again and again about Taylor Hendricks, UCF, University of Central Florida forward, listed at 6'9", 210 this past season at the University of Central Florida. Scored 15.1 points per game, pulled in 7 rebounds per game, dished out 1.4 assists, had 0.9 steals per game, and 1.7 blocks per game. Shooting splits for Mr. Taylor Hendricks were 53.5% from 2-point range, 39.4% from 3, and then 78.2% from that free throw line. I've just read a lot and done a lot more film study over the last month, especially on Taylor Hendricks, trying to really see if he can play the small forward. That's more of like a maybe, which is again why he's another guy that is further down the list for me. The parts where Hendricks worked the best were at power forward, especially on defense as a weak side rim protector. He was really good in that role. And at 6'9", 210, UCF did have a 7-foot dude, but he did not play as many minutes. He played more like 6-man type of minutes. he would start most games, but then they would pull him in certain matchups. So Taylor Hendricks ended up having to be the center, and a lot of times being the tallest dude on UCF when the 7 foot guy came off the court. And it just seems like, man, he works really well in this role, and the man-to-man defense is more of a projection down the line. So again, the idea of the fit, like, okay, this is somebody you're going to invest in and then take a while to see, like, maybe the man-to-man stuff comes around. What Taylor Hendricks does do well is shoot, though. 39.4%, like I said, from three. And even when you got into conference play, Taylor Hendricks shot something like 35% from three down the stretch. And he had some really brutal shooting games in the middle of the season, like from December 21st of 2022 until about January 11th. I mean, he was making like 1 of 6. He's 0 for 2, 1 of 7, 2 of 7, and then was able to turn that around, which is a good thing to me of looking at his profile of like, hey, when he goes through shooting slumps, you know, he's able to recover from it. I really buy into the jump shot. I really buy into the weak side rim protector things. But I don't know, without man-to-man defense, I think that knocks Taylor Hendricks down a little bit. He's definitely one that if the Pistons were like, you know what, let's trade down, and we feel like maybe Utah can give us 9 and 16, or maybe we can trade down with Indiana and get 7, and then their other later picks in the 20s, they want to do something like that, then I think Hendricks is definitely more into to play there. But man, for me personally, again, if I bought into his man-to-man defense more, I would definitely be more into Taylor Hendricks at the number 5 overall pick. I just think it's too hard for the Pistons to pass up on other dudes that project as wing defenders, which I personally think is the team's biggest weakness. And they really got to invest in a lot of things to shore up the defense right now. If they believe Taylor Hendricks could be that weak side rim protector that complements Duren or can work into really good rotation with somebody like Isaiah Stewart, or perhaps maybe they feel like, you know what, we can get Beef Stew to guard threes because he does have that lateral ability, the man-to-man switchability like that, they believe there, then maybe there is a scenario where Hendricks can go at number 5. The other thing to me that knocks Hendricks down is ball skills. At just right now, like Taylor Hendricks' ball skills are not there. They're not at an NBA level. They're not at a level to where you can say like he could be even like a third creator. This is probably more of a guy within the first, I want to say 4 to 5 years, where he's just a catch and shoot dude, attack closeouts. You're not really asking him to create. And not that the team needs it. I mean, I made the argument with Amin, you know, you don't want to have guys that take the ball out of Caden Ivey's hands, and you don't need somebody that has the development. But you would also like to have the number 5 overall be somebody that could be at least like a third option. And if you really buy into the defense, you have to buy into the defense as like Bam Adebayo or Jaden McDaniels or these dudes, these young dudes that come in and all of a sudden it's like, okay, they're one of the top defenders already, and they fill that position of need that we absolutely have a black hole at right now. And with Hendricks, again, to me, it's just pointing more to power forward. Power forward seems to be his best spot. And if the ball skills never come around, then you're drafting somebody who's like Tayshaun. And I know it's bananas to be like, why would you diss on Tayshaun here on Woodward Pistons? I'm not dissing on Tayshaun. I'm just saying at number 5, you're still looking for like Sheed, or you're still looking for Rip or Chauncey or Ben Wallace. You're not looking for, you know, Tayshaun. Tayshaun's the 5th guy in that lineup. As much as we like him, you know, he's the guy that fits everything together. The Pistons ain't at that spot yet. They still need to be looking for the 4 other dudes that can create shots or just affect the game in a bunch of different other ways, and then look for the 5th starter somewhere later on down the line. The next guy on the list is Asar Thompson of OTE, the Overtime Elite, listed at 6'7", 215 pounds for the Overtime Elite this past season. Asar Thompson scored 16.3 points per game, pulled in, let's see, on the rebounds, I believe it was something like 7.1 rebounds, 6.1 assists, and shooting splits were 56.2% from 2-point range, 29.8% from 3-point range, and then from that free throw line, Asar Thompson shot 66.2%. I know the shooting is the big concern for everybody, so let me just cut it off here. All right, so y'all ready to take this journey with me? Ausar Thompson in the preseason for the Overtime Elite. I believe it was 4 or 5 games, was 1 for 17 in the preseason. That is 5.9% from 3-point range. Brutal, brutal, brutal start to his overall season. But it's the preseason, trying things out, whatever. First 10 games in the regular season, again, OTE plays a 16-game schedule. So in games 1 through 10, Ausar Thompson was 13 of 36 from three. That is 36.1% from three on 3.6 attempts from 3-point range per game. So again, from games 1 to 10 in the Overtime Elite schedule, Ausar Thompson was 13 of 36 from three. That translates to 36.1% on 3.6 attempts per game from downtown. After that, from games 11 to 16, Ausar went in the tank. He shot 5 of 24 from three. That is 20.8%, 20.8% on 4 attempts per game. So not looking good for Ausar. 1 of 17, then 13 of 36, back down to 5 of 24. These percentages don't look fantastic. Well, the playoffs start for the Overtime Elite. They have a 5-game playoff schedule, and Ausar Thompson shoots 15 of 39 from three, which translates to 38.5% on 7.8 attempts per game. So he really upped the volume in the playoffs and shot his best percentage of the season in that range. Again, in the playoffs, 5 games. So yes, if you want to say small sample size, I understand that. But to me, at least when the competition ramps up, and again, one of the things I've argued over and over and over again for Ausar is, as a shooter, the worst thing you can do when you get in a slump is stop shooting. You got to keep putting them up in order to get out of the slump. Any good shooter will tell you that. Any good shooting coach will tell you that as well. And another thing to me is, for a player that came into the year below his brother, that everybody said like, oh, the jump shot is it. Maybe Ausar is like a mid-round type of guy. It shows that he put in the work and was able to do it under live fire, and he did not care if he was missing them, because he understood that process, that not only do I have to do this, but in order to get better at it, I have to keep putting them up when I go in a slump, and I have to do it under live fire in order to get better at it. The overall picture for Ausar, though, on the total, so all the totals from the preseason, games 1 through 16 and those 5-game playoffs, he was 34 of 116 attempts from 3-point range, which translates to 29.3%. So if you're somebody who's going to criticize and be worried about it, yes, I understand that. So again, for the whole season, from the preseason to the regular season of the playoffs, add all those totals up, and Ausar is 34 of 116 attempts from three, which translates to 29.3%. But if you take out the preseason, because I mean, most teams don't consider preseason, whether it's high school, whether it's NCAA, whether it's NBA, you don't factor those numbers in there, right? Because a lot of times you're just trying things out, or you're just warming up or whatever. Well, without the preseason, Ausar Thompson, slip of the tongue there. Ausar shot 33 of 99 shots from 3-point range, so that's 33.3%. Easy math there. Again, without the preseason numbers, Ausar Thompson shot 33 of 99 attempts from 3-point range, which is 33%. That's a positive indicator for me, especially if you wind the clock back a year ago. Everybody was like, I don't know about Ausar. He seems like less of an athlete than his brother. I don't know about the passing. He's more of like a standstill guy. Like, his jump shot looks blah. That's really good work and really good indication of progression. I'm not going to sit up here and argue that Ausar is going to come in and shoot like 40% out the gate, but I think it at least shows, again, the work that he put in, and that he is a better shooter than I think he's given credit for. And more people have come around to my thinking. I've had Ausar over Amen for quite a while on my big board because of these things. And I know the conversation here for me is all about the shooting so far. I really haven't gotten any other things that I like about Ausar. But for the Pistons, again, the fit, the whole thing, maybe this thing should just be entitled like the fit amongst the guys with good potential at number 5. That helps with the fit of like, hey, look at all these other things. And it even has somebody over like Anthony Black, who was 30% from three. And his numbers too, Anthony Black, I tried to chop him up of like, let me look at his just calendar year 2023. Let me look at just conference play. Or like maybe there's a stretch where he did, and it's like, nah, there's really no area where you can chop up for Anthony Black where you feel confident in his shooting numbers. But for Asar, he has that leg up of like, oh yeah, once the regular season and the playoffs kicked off, he was actually an average shooter, which is a positive indicator for somebody a year ago that everybody was like, man, nah, this guy ain't gonna shoot. Other than that, though, Asar, 6'7", 215, can be a top wing defender, great athlete, not as much as his brother, but a really good lateral mover, a pretty good leaper as well. And I keep saying he would be an ideal teammate for Cade because we all know Cade's favorite pass is the lob, and Asar is always looking to catch lobs. That's one of the other things that I really like about Asar is he doesn't need the ball because Amen was the guy with the ball in his hands most of the time. So you can see that Asar has got all these other skills of like knowing how to cut, knowing when to cut, working on his catch and shot thing, being able to be find lobs in there. Him and his brother too are transition terrors. Like that goes without saying. If the Pistons drafted Asar, like watch out, Cade and Asar in transition. That is just going to be poetry in motion. It's going to be a thing of beauty. And then the defense, again, Asar is one of the three guys I think who has the best defensive potential to fit in between Cade and Ivy, has the size to man the small forward position, has the athleticism and the lateral ability to be a man-to-man guy on small forwards and on shooting guards. Maybe we'll be able to do it on power forwards as well if he can get a bit more strength in his lower body. We shall see. But man, Asar has one of the highest ceilings of the guys here, of these 7 guys in contention for number 5, in my opinion. And I keep saying he's like an Andre Iguodala type of player, to where, you know, Iguodala on those Sixer teams early in his career, trying to take over for AI, still was really good even without a 3-point shot. Went over to Denver in a trade, helped that team to win 57 games as pretty much the top guy there. Then ended up in Golden State and showed like, oh yeah, now when I have these other teammates who help me and I don't need to be the primary scorer, look at everything else I do. I can win a finals MVP based off just my defensive alone and be one of the catalysts for launching a dynasty like we've never seen before in the modern era. I really like Asar and think he could be like that Andre Iguodala type of player, which is somebody you absolutely want in between Cade and Ivy. And then next on the list, of course, is Jarace Walker, who is listed as 6'8". He measured in at 240 at the combine, has a 7'2.5" wingspan as well. Jarace Walker comes out of Houston, scored 11.2 points per game, pulled in 6.8 rebounds, dished out 1.8 assists, had 1 steal per game, 1.3 blocks per game, and then the shooting splits were 51.5% from 2-point range, 34.7% from 3-point range, and 66.3% from that free throw line. I know a lot of people are trying to say like, oh, Ian and Beef Stew are the same guy. They are not. Number one, if you listen to the last show we had here with Jam Hines of Draft Digest, and who is a fantastic scout, he said Jarace Walker can be that defender that you say, go, you're guarding LeBron, you're guarding Kawhi, and you got it that night. You know, those type of defenders are special and are rare. And like I've said a million times before here on my podcast, anywhere I've been, it's incredibly rare for a freshman to come into a team with national title aspirations and they tell him, okay, you're going to run our defense. Like, you are our defense. You're the center of it. You're the focal point of it, because you have to have such a high IQ. You have to have a really good understanding of not just like positioning and everything, but like adjusting on the fly, being a good communicator, which especially as a freshman and a young guy, man, there are not too many that command that level of respect by their teammates. Because number one, you have to show it in practice to be like, oh yeah, I know where to go and I know where to do and everything. And then you have to show it in games when things go awry, to call a timeout or to have an adjustment in the game, to be like, hey, here, do this instead. Because normally the veteran guys are the ones that are doing it, that have seen it before. Again, Jarace Walker's defensive abilities are second to none in this draft class, in my opinion. And the offense is the biggest concern for so many people. A couple of other things that I've picked up along the way with Jarace Walker. Number one, the No Ceilings interview that they did with Jarace Walker's teammate, Marcus Sasser. Go listen to it. He talks a little bit about Jarace, saying that he thought Jarris had one of the best handles on that Houston team, and he's just not able to show up because he's not the focal point of the offense, and he's doing so much work on defense. Also, the passing was fantastic in high school. It's the thing to me that popped the most when I watched Jarris Walker tape at IMG Academy. 4.1 assists as a senior at IMG. He had 385 total assists across 4 years in high school. This reminds me a lot of Bam Adebayo, where Bam had that in his arsenal in high school, but you go to Kentucky, you got to fit in a role. You got to fit in a role and try to win games. Same thing with Jarris here in Houston. Kelvin Sampson is notorious for wanting guys that play defense. He does not have many freshmen that come in and play this way because normally they're not ready. But Jarris is. Then again, his number one thing was to be the defensive guy. And number two, even though like the scoring is an issue with Jarris Walker, he was still the second leading scorer on a Houston squad, which speaks volumes with Jamal Shad and Jermon Mark and these guys that were, again, veterans that are already there. Jarris Walker came in and was the second leading scorer there as well. I keep saying that Jarris is somewhere between OG Anunoby and Bam Adebayo. OG Anunoby has multi-position defensive versatility. OG's like 6'7", 230, so pretty similar size to Jarris. Played shooting guard this last year. Most of the time has been small forward, power forward. In the past, played some center as well, which I think Jarris could do those exact same things too. And OG Anunoby's like first year stats are kind of black, but then after that, started scoring more in the double digits. 3-point shot got better and better. And then to me, the Bam Adebayo stuff comes in with Jarris with the passing. So all that stuff with OG where like, hey, he worked on the jump shot, got better. He's more of a complimentary. He adds just a little bit more and more on offense every year to work his way up to being like third option pretty much every night in and out. And oh, by the way, he can guard LeBron. He can guard KD. He's one of those dudes that you're just like, I don't want to face this OG tonight. 6'7", 230, and he's going to be everywhere. He's got strength to lean on me and feel it. He's got lateral ability, so I can't really shake him. You want that with Jarris Walker. And then, oh, by the way, he can be like this DHO nightmare where he's just getting so many assists, finding all these open lanes for Cade and Ivy to cut. Especially with Ivy, I think Ivy and Jarris Walker would be a fantastic two-man duo with how Ivy just can get to the rim in a flash. And then the way Cade would use him in ball screens would be great, fantastic. I do think Jarris can play the small forward, which is why I think he's one of the top options for the Pistons here. Again, mainly on defense. It might be a little bit more of a, learning curve, a little bit more time for the floor spacing to come around. But again, for the team that has Cade and Ivy, that's who you want to have the ball in the hands first. And you just want Jarris to do little things like the DHO game, like attacking closeouts and these other things. And again, triple beef. I keep saying triple beef. I think that Jarris, Beef Stew, and Jalen Duren can all play together. Duren's the rim protector, and then Jarris and Beef Stew have that switchability on defense. Jarris is super high. I think Beef Stew could be like Kevon Looney with a 3-point shot. And if you think, Kevon Looney or whatever, you're not watching enough playoff basketball game. Golden State probably loses a couple games down the line, and they definitely don't get one title if Kevon Looney's not there because he's made so many key plays, pulled in so many key rebounds, and done all these other things. And it's like, oh, I get that guy along with a 3-point shot. Like, yeah, absolutely, I want him in there. And you see Kevon Looney play with Draymond on there, who sucks spacing the floor, but guess what? Steph and Clay were able to space the floor all on their own. Not that Cade and Ivy are going to be Steph and Clay, but I think they could be high-level scorers where, again, you want the ball in their hands, and they create so much other offense that the defensive guys and the Draymond Jarris of like high-level processor and IQ and passing and defense, yeah, that guy can fit into a bunch of different lineups and do a bunch of different things. I really, 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 really like Jarris Walker. So again, I said I was going to end with the fan favorite, which of course is Cam Whitmore. I know many, many, many of y'all out there are clamoring for Cam. I've seen all the polls on Twitter where he wins it by landslide. Seems to be the player that everybody wants at the number 5 overall pick. Cam Whitmore coming out of Villanova, listed at 6'7", measured in at 230, I believe, at the combine. Disappointing wingspan, though. It was around 6'9". That's the one thing I think that's going to knock Cam down Maybe a peg or two, if I'm being quite honest. I don't know. SAR's wingspan was 7 feet. Jarris's was 7'2.5". Taylor Hendricks was 7 feet. I mean, I think Grady Dick might be the only one where it becomes less than Cam. So that's going to be a thing, especially when it comes to defense. If you're going to want to say like Cam's the primary wing defender, and his wingspan is less than that, it's a thing for some. Maybe it's not a thing for you, but again, I want to be fair and look at all these different things, and that is the one thing in Cam's profile that we should consider when you're looking at all these other guys. Is like, oh, he does have the shortest wingspan of the bunch. Probably that's the best vertical out of anybody, though. I mean, if you just Google Cam Whitmore vertical, you're going to be like, I did not know a human being could jump that high. This past season at Villanova, Cam Whitmore scored 12.5 points per game, pulled in 5.3 rebounds, dished out 0.7 assists, had 1.4 steal per game, 0.3 blocks. And then the shooting splits were 57.8% from 2-point range, 34.3% from 3-point range, and then 70.3% from that free throw line. This is a guy that is the easiest to project as like second or third scorer alongside Caden Ivey. Definitely somebody that's going to start his career at attacking closeouts. I know the passing is an issue for some people. To me, it's not, for a couple of different reasons. I've heard Motor City Hoops talk about this on the Pistons Pulse, saying like, you know what, on a team that has Caden Ivey, do you really want Jarris to be the one making all the, or Jarris, excuse me, slip here? Do you really want Cam to be the one like creating shots for other people? No, you don't need him to do that. He can start off his career in the corner or from the wings, attacking closeouts, catching lobs from Cade, which he can do as well. And Cam Whitmore's shooting, I think, is underrated. I know for some people it's a question, but for me, he had a thumb injury, I believe. Cam Whitmore started off the year, so he missed like the first 5 or 6 games, and then got into it. Took a little while to come around. First 6 games, Cam Whitmore only made 6 threes, so that's like 1 3-point make per game. But then got it going. The last 20 games in Cam Whitmore's season, he shot 37.3% from 3 on 4.2 attempts per game from 3-point range. So again, that's 37.3% from 3-point range on 4.2 attempts per game, which 4.2 attempts is what he averaged for the entire year. And to me, one of the things I always really like to feel more confident in with guys is look at their, shooting down the line, especially in conference play, and especially once the calendar year turns over. Because, the end of the basketball season starts in 1 year. So like this year it started in 2022, and then it ends in the next year, 2023. I always like to chop up stats that way of, number one, how did they shoot in conference play when, these are the teams that really have a lot of film on you. A lot of them you have, twice, you face them twice. So how do they adjust to you? And then chop it up into the year 2023, because you know how it is, you go through holidays and whatever. And especially during the Christmas break, that's when the really good coaching staffs take a lot more time to look at tape. They have more time to prep. And so once you get back into the new year, you come back for that, winter or spring semester, wherever you are, how do you respond to that? And for Cam, it was good. His shooting got better as it went down the line. So I think as a shooter, he's underrated, and it's something we should consider. Another thing is Cam Whitmore made a big difference at Villanova that I don't think enough people talk about. And this is one of those, like, I don't know, you call it eyeball tests, but to me, it was noticeable. I watched a lot of Villanova even without Cam, just because I'm kind of a sicko that way. I always like Villanova guys. I think even with Jay Wright gone, like, I'm still intrigued by them and think the way that the system is. And Kyle Neptune was on Jay Wright's staff. I still think they will set up and turn out good pros. So I always like to watch to see who's going to be the underrated guy coming out of Villanova. Like Colin Gillespie was the guy last year. Just seems like somebody that's going to work out, even though he was undrafted. And without Cam Whitmore, Villanova was 2-6. That was a 25% win percentage. So again, without Cam Whitmore, Villanova was 2-6. They only won 2 games. And then with Cam Whitmore, they were 15-11, which is a 57.7% win percentage. It's still not like fantastic, but that's a big difference. And I think when you watch the film, you definitely see there's nobody to rescue the offense. The passing numbers with Gigi Jackson and with Cam are going to be the thing that a lot of people harp on. But if you listen to my podcast, Resball podcast, one of the mid-season episodes I did was on assist percentage, Gigi Jackson and Cam Whitmore, and assist percentage. And I tried to find guys that in the past had really high usage percentage. That means they took up a lot of the offense and the team relied upon them a lot to score, and they had super low assist percentage. And what I found were there are actually a lot of successful NBA players that had that profile. Kevin Durant was one of them. And what I looked at was like, do you have 25% or over usage? And is your assist percentage like under 12%? So Kevin Durant was one of them. Michael Beasley was one of them. TJ Warren was one of them. John Collins was one of them. He had like a super low assist rate. It was something like 4.5%. Carmelo Anthony was one of them. And to me, what I found looking at film, both of those guys back in the day, and of Cam and of Gigi, is like, what's the better option on that team? Do you really want Kevin Durant to be giving the ball up to somebody else? Do you really want Melo to be like a facilitator? No. What they were brought in to do is be the primary offensive guy. And for Cam in particular, I think there were so many possessions where like his teammates were ISOing and he's just like standing around trying to be a good teammate, young guy. Other times he's like clamoring for the ball and they don't pass it to him. And there were so many other ones where it was like, there's 5 seconds left in the shot clock. And they're like, Cam, rescue us. Or 10 seconds left in the shot clock. And they're like, all right, young fella, it's your turn to do something. There are just so many instances of that. That really needs to be in the scouting profile of like, you know what? His shooting got better. I know the passing number is low, but like, look at this team. They just kind of made him rescue them a lot of times. And yeah, he profiles like these dudes in the past where the better option, there's no better option than just to give this guy the ball and let them score. Cam Whitmore at number 5, I think would be one of those ones that nobody can really complain about. Great athlete. Again, the shooting looks fine. Is a really good natural scorer. And the last thing to me is, again, about Carmelo. Melo is actually a mentor for Cam. He recruited him to be on his AAU team. So that's somebody that's been in his ear and helped him out a lot. I think I put that out on Twitter or on here once, and somebody's like, rewrite the past, right the wrong, draft the guy that Melo mentored to help get over the Darko pick. So again, those are the 7 guys I think the Pistons should be really in consideration for the number 5 overall pick. Again, Grady Dick, Anthony Black, Gigi Jackson, Taylor Hendricks, Ausar Thompson, Jarris Walker, and of course, many Piston fans' favorite out there, Cam Whitmore. Thank you so much again for joining us here. Again, I'm Steve. You can find me on Twitter at ResBallPod. Definitely subscribe to the channel here at Woodward Pistons. Follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, here on YouTube. At Woodward Pistons is where it's always going to be. And Joe D and I will see you next time. He's still working those phones to see what's going to go on, schedule workouts for that number 5 overall pick. He doesn't work for the team, but man, don't nobody tell him that.